Welcome! In this module we will address some of the social aspects that are relevant for electric mobility, such as how people decide on purchasing a vehicle and how governments strive to optimize social welfare. In this first lecture we will focus on the vehicle purchase decision and how it might be influenced by policy interventions. For most households, purchasing a vehicle is the second largest purchase they make in their lifetime, after the buying of their home. Modern cars easily last more than 200,000 miles or 300,000 kilometers. So with an average annual mileage of about 20,000, this means that a typical car lasts 15 to 20 years. So any brand new car that is sold with a fossil fuel driven engine today is bought with the implicit understanding that the customer can count on being supplied with fossil fuel for at least the next 1 or 2 decades. Let us therefore have a look at what drives the vehicle purchase decision of consumers and how policymakers might intervene in this. Although vehicle purchase motivations vary from country to country, the main motivation from buying a new car, or that is a used car, is to fulfill a travel need, the travel needs of the household. The purchase decision may also be driven by new needs, such as the need for a bigger car after a family expansion, or by new technology on the market, which may bring better fuel efficiency or new features to be enjoyed by the car owner. And it is true, such reasons also play a role, but they are far less important than the basic travel need that must be fulfilled. And this insight is obviously relevant from the perspective of the policymaker, as the personal vehicle is not the only option to fulfill travel needs. Investments in comfortable, safe and reliable public transport, such as buses, trains, light rail, subway systems, and what have you, may for many commuters eliminate the need for car ownership. And of course, this option of public transport is much more sustainable from an environmental and mobility perspective than trying to persuade everybody into buying an electric vehicle. However, rather than discouraging car ownership, many municipal governments throughout the world have for decades been accommodating car ownership in densely populated areas. They have chopped trees to make new roads and to make existing roads wider, with, well, not always, but often with utter disregard for the comfort and safety of pedestrians who, in many cities in India, for example, have to navigate unpaved sidewalks with open drains, scattered fencing and building materials, without shade and often without streetlights. So, encouraging citizens to refrain from buying cars thus involves dedicated infrastructure planning to provide safe, reliable and comfortable alternatives for public transport as well as for walking and cycling, the healthier alternatives. A good addition to public transport is vehicle sharing. Shared vehicles are especially popular with the younger urban population. Members of car sharing schemes are known to refrain from purchasing an individual vehicle. So car sharing reduces the number of cars on the street, whether driving or parked. More and more often we see electric cars being used in sharing schemes. As they are mainly used for short trips, the driving range is not perceived as a problem here. Do keep in mind, however, that rural and urban areas have different needs. As a consequence of the general trend worldwide of people flowing from the countryside to the city, the density of services in rural areas has dramatically decreased in many countries. People have to cover larger distances to reach schools, hospitals, banks, shops, and so forth. And at the same time, a public transport is often not very economical in rural areas, leading to a low frequency of service. So it comes as no surprise that personal vehicle ownership is for most the preferred alternative in the countryside. That is, if the people can afford it. So let us assume now that as a policymaker you have exhausted your options to promote public and shared transport. Still, a significant part of the population is inclined to buying a vehicle for personal use. Then what are the main factors that drive the purchase decision? Well, the main driver behind vehicle choice is the cost, as most of us have a limited budget for buying a vehicle. Cars are a substantial purchase, and the price we can afford is limited, obviously, by our income. In this respect, electric vehicles come at a major disadvantage, as the high battery costs make the upfront investment for an electric vehicle much higher than for a conventional car with an internal combustion engine. The high upfront investment cost of an electric vehicle is compensated by much lower variable costs for fuel and maintenance. But interestingly, car buyers do not truly value the savings on variable costs. They tend to value these up to 3 times lower than the actual economic value of these savings. So as a policymaker, here you have a point where you may successfully intervene to influence the car buyer's decision. You may decide to reduce the purchase costs, for example by offering subsidies or tax exemptions, or you could consider investing into battery research and development in order to structurally reduce battery costs in the longer term. Given the substantial share of battery costs in the costs of an electric vehicle, let me just sidestep for a moment and briefly elaborate on the alternative approach that was offered by Better Place, a company founded in 2007. The idea of Better Place was that customers would buy an electric vehicle without buying the battery. Instead, they would purchase driving distance by subscribing to an electric fuel contract with Better Place, covering battery use, daily charging and battery swaps, in turn for monthly payments based on a per-distance fee. You can compare that to your smartphone description, in which you contract a predefined amount of megabits and airtime, per month. And in fact, the idea of exchangeable battery service that was brought by Better Place is not new at all. It was already successfully brought into practice for the very first generation of electric vehicles in the early 1900s, between 1900 and 1920, in Europe as well as in the US. Better Place developed a modern, smart, more advanced version of this concept, including dedicated battery swapping infrastructure and a charging infrastructure network that was based on a smart grid software platform, designed to enable economical recharging of hundreds of thousands of battery packs simultaneously by shifting recharging to off-peak demand hours. But unfortunately, Better Place never came to serve hundreds of thousands of cars simultaneously. The company, in fact, ceased to exist in 2013. I don't know why. It may have come too early. It may have been mismanaged. The upfront investment in battery swapping infrastructure, it's very high, and that may have caused it to fail. I cannot tell you which one is the major cause of Better Place failing to make it. Better Place claimed battery swaps in 59 seconds. You didn't even have to leave your car, which is certainly a lot faster than even fast recharging services available today. The concept of battery pack switching, however, requires international standards for battery packs, and those were not yet available in 2007. So this is just another example of the crucial role of standardization, where governments can play a role. But after this excursion, let us get back to the purchase decision of prospective car buyers. Other important factors, besides the upfront investment, other important factors in the purchase decision are the vehicle, are the features of the vehicle itself, the type of engine, the vehicle model, the latter being related to the specific needs of the household. Obviously, a family of 6 is more likely to look at a large family car rather than a small coupe. Looking at the electric vehicles currently on the market, it is interesting to note that an overwhelming number of electric car models available are luxury sedans and large SUVs. Although it was long predicted that electric vehicles would enter the market as convenient small city cars, Tesla approached the market completely the other way around, with a sports car and a luxury sedan. And other car manufacturers, in fact, have followed the Tesla example. And it makes sense, because it plays into the strengths of electric vehicles and it downplays their weaknesses. A particular strength of electric cars is the fast acceleration, which is an attractive feature for sports cars. So car enthusiasts are willing to pay a premium for this additional acceleration rate. The choice for luxury sedans also makes sense, as the relative additional cost for luxury in electric cars with sufficient range is minimal. Another important factor that plays a role in the relatively slow adoption of electric vehicles is concerned with the ease of use. This relates, amongst others, to the limited driving range and the, as yet, relatively sparse availability of charging infrastructure. But limited driving range is an issue that is already, being solved and likely to be solved soon. Automakers have estimated that a driving range of at least 300 kilometers should resolve range anxiety. For future models, it is the question whether automakers will invest in more range or in lowering the vehicle costs. And this trade-off could well be, a major influence on the speed of adoption. Investing or stimulating investment in charging infrastructure may therefore well be one of the more crucial interventions a policymaker can make. At the same time, policymakers can consider to discourage us from buying gasoline and diesel-fueled cars, for example by increasing fossil fuel taxes or by enforcing environmental zones designed to keep polluting cars out of the cities. Once electric car ownership catches on, another mechanism influencing the purchase decision comes into play. Most consumers are influenced by their peers, by what others in their social circle do and learn. The more of your friends, relatives, colleagues and neighbors buy electric vehicles and report good experiences, the more you will be inclined to buy an electric vehicle too. This is one of the mechanisms at play in the S-curve of new technologies that shows exponential growth after a slow start. The features that encourage us to adopt a new technology may not always be fully grounded in rationality. Especially with cars, emotional values are part of the picture. After all, the success of the internal combustion engine car cannot be attributed to its supreme qualities. At the time when internal combustion engine cars entered the market, they were far less reliable than the electric cars around, and you often needed to be a mechanic as much as a driver to reach your destination. Historians today think that internal combustion engine cars won the market because they brought a sense of adventure and freedom that was then lacking with electric cars. Which emotions and values then come into play in our decision to purchase an electric vehicle today? Is it status? Is it a sense of responsibility? Is it both? Or is it something entirely else? In influencing our behavior, policymakers can intervene with information and awareness campaigns, nudging us towards the choice for an electric car. Thank you for watching.